we go to the Miami Hurricanes, a team that certainly thinks that college football is more fun when they're better. We can talk about that being true or not, but Miami has been relevant again over these last couple of years. Mario Cristobal has come down. He has certainly raised the floor of what Miami football is capable of these last couple of seasons, right? They had some just absolute stinkers over the last decade. They have never won an ACC championship game. But this year, they're once again right there in the top echelon. Our Jimmies and Joes are picking them second in the conference. They've got a new quarterback in Carson Beck, and they are replacing a whole lot of starters on the offensive side of the ball. So, talk to me about the Canes. Second feels fair to you? Is it too high? Is it too low? Where do you net out on Miami?
I think it's about where I would put them. I could maybe make an argument for a couple other programs. I could make an argument for Georgia Tech. I could make an argument for SMU to be second. But the thing about Miami is it just feels like last year was the year that they were building for, right? Like they went all in on last year. They came up short, didn't make it to the playoff at the end after losing to Syracuse. And that's a really tough thing to bounce back from, right? We saw Mike Norvell right across the other side of the state. They were building for 2023 and they paid off and they went undefeated. And then the fall off was really big the next year, even though we had some portal additions that we highlighted. So I'm not predicting 2-10 for Miami this year. I don't think it's going to be that type of a drastic fall off, but this is a situation that's just really hard to get a read on because in a vacuum, you think about Mario Cristobal, you think about how he's progressed. It was a 5-7 year one, a 7-5 year two, I believe, and then 10-2 in the regular season last year. That's a fine progression, right? That is a perfectly acceptable building block to get to year three. And then you're starting to think about year four, but it's just weird that year three was expected to be the year. And we kind of even said last year, if they don't do it last year, don't know what to tell you about the future because we knew that this rebuild was coming. As for those players on the field, I've heard a lot of Carson Beck slander this offseason, and I don't buy into that. I think I'm actually buying a pretty nice bounce back year for Carson Beck.
Okay.
Um, I am of the opinion, I've said it many times on this show, that Mike Bobo is not a good offensive coordinator. And I think that Carson Beck was trying to do a little too much in that offense last year. He also had a receiving core that was the worst in college football when it came to drop passes. So that's just naturally going to make you press. And didn't have a run game to fall back on. Just everything that could have gone wrong on that offense was going wrong for Carson Beck last year. And I think he felt that pressure. So I'm expecting a nice bounce back year for him. He's not going to have a ton of known commodities on the offensive side of the ball. Don't think he'll have as good of a run game as Cam Ward got to enjoy with Martinez last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, they're losing like their top 7 receivers or something ridiculous like that. So it's a
Yep.
lot of rebuilding there as well. But at the same time, it's a new quarterback that's getting to build chemistry with those new receivers. So I think that could actually kind of work to their advantage that they're all coming in at the same time and know that they're going to need to build that chemistry.
Yeah, CJ Daniels comes over from LSU. They've got JoJo Trader. Ray Joseph's a guy that we've heard a lot about over the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's going to have to be the new guy, the new X factor in Miami. That's one thing that I don't maybe CJ Daniels is that guy. We've certainly seen him be very, very productive at both Liberty and LSU. So maybe he and Beck instantly form that connection and he's a problem through the air. I think that's certainly a likely outcome. How do you feel about the offensive line? They've got 3 starters coming back, a new center in James Brockmeyer, who transfers over from TCU, I believe. And then Markai Bell, I believe, is their listed left tackle. Miami had a top 35 rushing attack last year. They were the 3rd best passing offense. Obviously, Cam Ward had everything to do with that. But Carson Beck at times last year looked really ineffective because the offensive line at Georgia struggled. So do you believe that Miami's offensive line is going to be an upgrade over Georgia's?
I do, mostly because of Mario Cristobal. If there's
Yeah.
one position I trust Cristobal to get right, it is the offensive line. Even in some of those down years in the beginning of his tenure, they were still pretty fine on the offensive line. They kind of got it together towards the end of the year, his first year, and then year 2 and 3 they were excellent, like you mentioned. So, yeah, I think if there's anything I'm buying in this year and buying as a constant amongst all the change on that side of the ball, it is the offensive line.
Sure. Over the defense, 70th in scoring defense a season ago. That was really frustrating at times, especially, boy, it culminated in that Pop Tarts Bowl, which, again, buy, sell, the relevancy of bowl games and who bought in and who didn't. But to
Especially
me,
if
when
your
I,
star only buys in for a half, which was just
yes,
odd.
which was objectively odd. But I think that's another sticking point for Miami fans, right? Is at times the defense is really good. And there's obviously 4 and 5 star talent. And they get some nice kids out of the transfer portal. But then there are other times where you look at like the Virginia Tech game. Virginia Tech did not have this unstoppable offense. In fact, they really struggled at times last year. And in that weird game that was ultimately decided by a terrible call by the officiating crew, Miami's defense really struggled to get stops when they needed to. They gave up 34 to the Hokies in that game.
Yeah, really good against the run pretty
Yes.
consistently last year, right? But when the pass defense lapsed, it lapsed very
Yeah.
badly. You mentioned the Virginia Tech game. The next week against Cal was very similar. The way that Cal was able to chuck it up and down the field. The Duke game had its
The
moments
Duke
like
game.
that. The Syracuse game at the end of the year. Louisville kind of just broke out into a shootout randomly. So yeah, when the pass defense broke down last year, it really broke down. They were either extremely dominant, stopping both, or the pass defense broke down and just caused the
Yeah.
floodgates to burst open. There wasn't really like an in between last year. As for this year, I think the front seven's still pretty loaded.
Yeah.
That's a unit that both the defensive line and the linebackers. I'm not really worried about them being able to stop the run and get a solid pass rush again this year. The secondary is where I do still find the concern. I love OJ Federique. He really broke out as a true freshman last year and found a role on this team. They got Kalante Scott from Auburn and Zachariah Porter from Jack State. I think those are really solid finds that could up the game of the secondary, but it is still the biggest concern on that side of the ball for me.
Talk to me about the schedule because there's some names on this schedule, right? I think maybe the biggest thing for me that stands between Miami and reaching that championship level potential, it's Notre Dame in the opener at home. It's a very talented South Florida team that they get at home. They'll host the in-state rival Gators after destroying them in the swamp last year. They get Florida State the week after that in Tallahassee. They've got to play Louisville. They've got to go to SMU. They host Syracuse and NC State. And then they'll finish the year at Pitt as well. It's not an easy schedule for Cristobal. And Mario, for all of his perks, certainly has been known to let some of those close games slip away.
There's the potential for things to get really weird, and that's definitely been a problem for Mario Cristobal as well. It all starts with how they handle the Florida gauntlet. I feel like
Yeah.
USF, Florida, and Florida State. I'm projecting them to lose to Notre Dame. I don't feel confident in them winning that game right now. I think that Notre Dame's just a little bit above where Miami is right now. But USF, Florida at Florida State, if you can find a way to win two of those games, even if it's USF and Florida State, I think that you're feeling pretty good about where things stand, even if you're 3-2 coming out of that. If you go worse than that, if you go 1-2, or heaven forbid 0-3 because USF is just really motivated to come into your house and beat you, we're firing all the alarms because the second half of the schedule, there's no hot dog at the turn after Florida State, right? Like it's a really difficult and really tricky spot down the stretch. Louisville at SMU, NC State and Syracuse, they're done playing home games on November 15th. And then you
Yeah.
got a bunch of Miami, South Florida boys going to Blacksburg, Virginia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in late November. They went up north last year at the end of the season. It didn't go well. I know that was inside, but still, it's a weird ending to the schedule to not play a home game either of the last 2 weeks. And it just really is a tough back half. So they need to make their hay against the in state teams to start off.
I think they certainly can. I think I'm with you on Notre Dame. I give the Irish the edge early. But yeah, I mean, lots of potential, lots of potential, I think, to solidify the resume and get into the playoff if you get those wins early and get the momentum going, and then maybe you steamroll through the back half of this schedule, right? I mean, the teams, at least you're getting your biggest games other than SMU, you're getting them at home, which is a nice perk. The road trip to Pitt, I think, is the one that we would say, based on our previews, you'd be most concerned about. But yeah, there's a lot of potential variance, I think, to the Hurricane schedule. And for me, the most telling thing, it's easy to think, oh, are we just hating on Miami? Are we just hating on Cristobal? Because listen, we have not been his biggest fans over the last couple of years. The under bettors have it right now. The over under is set at 9.5, and the money is coming in on the under, which is where I lean when I look at Miami. I think it's a very solid 9-3 season, but another year where Miami fans feel like they underachieved.
I think 9-3 would be fine if that's where they get. I think, especially with all the transition this year, you're probably pretty confident about what you're building for the future. I just real quick, we mentioned about SMU how they got they avoided all kind of the middle teams in the
Yeah.
conference. That's what makes me so nervous about this Miami schedule is they have all the wild cards. We
Yeah.
like Syracuse, but we know that their schedule is going to beat them down. Is Miami the team that they just jump up and beat? NC State has a good quarterback. Virginia Tech, if they put it together on offense, could be really interesting. And we really like Pitt. So they have all those wild card teams. And it's just going to make it a really interesting run down that back half.